Select your program.
Dialogue.
Program initiated.
Approach the threshold. Engage rationality. Open your mind. Godspeed.
I just want to start a flame in your heart.
Careening through space to your listening devices, this is Flagship Freedom, the podcast that places you on the front line in the war of ideas. My name is Michael.
And I'm Danny Boy.
And welcome to the 25th episode. You heard it right, 25th episode of the podcast. Danny, we gotta celebrate. Break out the champagne.
Yeah, we're a quarter century year old or something. Wait,
yeah. I'm not sure if it works exactly
We've been doing
like
this for
that.
25 years.
Yeah, that'd be an episode a year. And that would be something to celebrate about. But instead, we've only done 25 episodes, and you've been listening to them, so we have to thank you for that. In order to thank you for it, we do have a guest on the program that is the managing director of the Bastiat Society of Caracas, Venezuela, in fact. If you don't know about Bastiat Society, this is an organization that is located in Charleston. The headquarters is in Charleston, the United States. They are dedicated to the dissemination of the ideas of liberty, particularly free market economics, and they also do a fair amount of philosophy too. Now, our guest, his name is Leonardo Brito. He was so kind to come onto the program to talk a little bit about what is going on in Venezuela. As we all know, there is very little in the news and very much that is happening in Venezuela. Sort of a cognitive dissonance that is occurring with the mainstream media and what is going on actually in Venezuela, which really should be reported on at all times. A first world country that has been reduced to third world status, all within the last really 15 or 20 years. Danny, what did you take out of this conversation?
Well, first of all, yes, right you are about Venezuela. It's in the shadows right now, but people are chasing down chickens. It's Bernie Sanders' socialist hellhole that nobody seems to know about. And
Bernie doesn't even talk about.
Nope, it's very convenient. Very conveniently
Yeah.
ignored. And, well, anytime you bring it up, somehow it's not real socialism,
Right.
as you'll hear from our guest. But great guy. I'm just amazed that he even has the time to do something like that. Like the average person in Venezuela has lost like 20 pounds in the last year. So clearly very impressive that the guy even has the spare time to promote the message of liberty, even though it is really the most important thing he could possibly be doing. And I truly believe that. So I'm thankful for that we have people like him down at ground zero, literally risking their life as other people are being killed simply for promoting the idea of voluntary human trade.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. There are people that are dying promoting a freer society. As we know from history, this happens quite often in countries that have authoritarian regimes. And these regimes often start with good intentions, but really, really bad ideas. And I think that you'll find that that may be the case with Venezuela. I do hope that things get better for them. In the meantime, I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope you take something out of this one. I know I did. Let's roll the tape. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have Leonardo Brito, Managing Director of the Bastiat Society in Caracas, Venezuela, on the line. We are very excited to have him for the next hour talking to us about what is going on in Venezuela. I know that a lot of us here in America have heard whispers of the problems that have gone on, and in some cases, I would say about 5 or 10 years ago, some of us, especially on the left, were actually championing what was going on in socialism and the government in Venezuela under Hugo Chavez. And this is something that we would like to talk about as well, and we would like to dispel a lot of the mythology behind Hugo Chavez's success now turned to an absolute disaster. Suffice it to say, we experience here in America a very large amount of personal freedom and economic freedom compared to a lot of other places. And it's important for us to recognize this and recognize that these are the sorts of freedoms that other people throughout the world do not have. So, Leonardo, welcome on Flagship Freedom. We are happy to have you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much, Danny. Nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
I want to start off by saying that socialism is in many, many different countries under many different forms. There are a lot of socialist programs here in America even. Welfare, the military in some ways is socialist, the roads. We have a lot of socialist programs. There tends to be sort of a divergence when it comes to what we consider a socialist country and socialist programs with some free market, or I should say a free market with some socialist attachments to it. Sometimes these are actually contradictions, that a free market cannot exist with the little cancerous socialist attachments that exist. But socialism is very prevalent, and socialist countries, in a historical, socioeconomic, and economical sense, they're very prevalent in South America. You have it in Ecuador, in Bolivia. Argentina says that it's socialist, from what I understand. I don't know. I think a lot of their problems have made them want to scale back a lot of what they've done. Even a lot of the leftists in Brazil, where I have family members and I visited very recently, a lot of the leftists, they're very sympathetic towards a very large welfare net. So Venezuela, to the most of the world, is considered a socialist country. I want to talk to you about how do you define as socialism, and what do you see going on, generally speaking, in South America? And then we'll get down to Venezuela.
Yes, I usually tell to my American friends that you take your liberty for granted, because when we have liberty and we have everything, we just don't care. And it's just about time. It starts very slow, like a cancer. And when you know you have it, it's too late. I'm talking about socialism. Well, I believe socialism is any kind of violence towards the private property. Any kind of, when somebody takes your stuff, right? So, yes, Venezuela is a socialist country because, in fact, we don't have private property here. And what still exists are, like small entrepreneurs that in the black market. And thanks to them is that everything has not collapsed yet. But yeah, in fact, many Latin American countries have socialism. I don't know. Maybe it may be historical reasons, but I still believe it's they ignore that there's another way. We don't have in our academics lectures or in our universities. We don't have Adam Smith or things like that. All that we know is Marx. So I tend to believe that it's more that they don't have the knowledge, and we don't have the books, the knowledge. So it's more than an historical thing. It's just that they don't know there's another way to make the stuff, and all that we had here is not free market. The experiences we have in Latin America are crony capitalism, where the government and a bunch of rich guys control everything, and they fail. So the people says, "Oh, look, this is what the market does. This is what the freedom does. So we better have socialism."
Okay, so socialism was introduced to Venezuela under Hugo Chavez. Am I correct? In the late 1990s?
No, socialism was introduced like 60 years ago by one man called Rómulo Betancourt. He was a president, and he introduced the term of social justice and another term that is really wrong. That is that the oil is for the people. When we discovered that Venezuela was an oil country, and we used to be a country where we made coffee and cocoa and those things, but when we discovered the oil, and they believed that the best way to make the country move forward is redistributing the oil. So they started to preach this in the schools, that this kind of nationalism, that we are the owners of the soil, we are the owners of whatever the earth produce. So, Chavez was about time. It was a process of like 40 years. We used to be a very free country, but they started to taking control over everything, and a slow process, and then Chavez came. It was the tip of the cake.
It was a slow process up until Chavez, who basically opened up and said, now we are avowed anti-capitalists and we are a socialist country. Up until Chavez, it was a slow nationalization of industries and programs. I know Venezuela, they nationalized their largest institute. The Oil Institute is your largest institute. It's something like 50 or 60% of your GDP, right?
Yeah, well, it's 93%, something like that. That's why we are, in fact, in the largest crisis we ever had, because the oil prices went down, and when Chavez was president, the oil prices were like 120 for a barrel. Right now they are like 30. So they the welfare state, they cannot afford anymore. So they have to use repression and violence. But the problem is not the price of the oil. The problem is socialism. And that's what we're trying to explain to the people.
So right now, my understanding is Venezuela, like everything's coming to a head. Like, people are basically starving, killing animals.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an utter disaster. I've been watching the situation for a year or two now, and it's pretty tragic, I think. But a lot of Americans, and really everybody who I've been talking to online, they are very, very casual with their language, and they seem to have no sense of evidence or of empirical reality or the effects of, comparing socialism to capitalism. Like, for them, all that matters is the intention. They say, well, we want everybody to be equal. Therefore, it's going to be great, and ponies and butterflies. But I want, this is why it's...
Feel the burn.
Oh, right. Bernie Sanders bringing about, like, an open socialism. Socialism is becoming really popular in the United States. And to these people, at least one thing they're perceptive to, they love to shut down the messenger based on their experience. They say, oh, you're a white male, you're rich, you have no room to talk. So now we brought a real Venezuelan on the program to explain what socialism really is. And I want to ask you, how can you say with confidence, I mean, we all know here because we study the topic, but to the people who don't know, to the Bernie Sanders fans, the Hillary Clinton fans, how do we know that socialism is the cause of the failures in Venezuela? Like, you've been there, you've seen it, you've seen the real life cause and effect. So can you speak about that?
Yeah, well, when the government says that everything that is happening is thanks to the United States, it's American fault, when we see in history that all the socialist countries were facing the same situation. I mean, they had a scarcity, long lines, red lines, they were eating animals. In China, they were eating each other, they were eating dogs. It's the same thing when you read the history in the Soviet Union. So it is not a surprise for the people who know about socialism, who they really study or they lived it. So what I could tell to those people, I think most of them are young guys, millennials. They believe in justice, and I think they're fighting for what they think is fair. But the problem is that I think they should reconsider about studying history. We all know capitalism is not perfect. Well, nothing is perfect. We are not perfect as human beings. But I think that capitalism is the only way that we can really improve our lives, because it all matter. All that matters is property. When you have property, when you are the owner of the property, you can dream, right? You can make things, you can achieve things, you can, you can do whatever you want, right? So the problem in socialism is that you don't have property, and when you don't have property, you cannot dream. I mean, even the government says how many bread can you eat? How many things are you gonna do? So I think the problem with these guys, I don't know, the millennials, the Bernie Sanders fans, are that first they don't know much about history, and second they don't care much about property, because I believe that when you destroy property, you destroy everything, every incentive that you have to produce everything. I mean, I'm not going to produce bread because I love the people, right? I'm going to produce bread because there's an incentive to do it.
Oh, you're so selfish. You only care about yourself. You're so bad.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they say. But yeah, the problem is that they should, I mean, study more about what socialism is. It really is, because when you when somebody, I mean, nobody likes when somebody takes money out of your pocket without your permission and gives to another, right? So I think that in inside we are all capitalists. It's like human nature, right? So the problem with socialism is that it's against the human nature. It destroys the human nature. It corrupts you, and because of that, it is impossible. I mean, every socialist says, no, but that wasn't real socialist. No,
Right.
but that it's true. It's true. They are right, because socialism is impossible. You can never get there.
Interesting. Yeah, I hear that from they say the Soviet Union wasn't real communism. I've heard people say Venezuela is state capitalism. It's like,
Yeah.
you can't possibly pile enough dead bodies up to ever prove a point to these people.
It's like when it fails, and it is an inevitable failure, then it is no longer socialism, because socialism ipso facto cannot fail. It is impossible, and it's this pure idealistic thing in the clouds. Once you, if and when you get to that, then hallelujah, honey and milk for everyone. But up until that point, it's either a failure or we're getting to it.
You just have to kill some more dissenters and rebels, and then just got to kill one more.
Yeah.
So, Leonardo, what do you think is the public perception? Is there a change? I know that there's been a lot of mass demonstrations and protests. Are people starting to wake up? You know, you're at the center of this intellectual movement. So where do you see the country going in the next 5 or 10 years?
I see a lot of people with fear. They have really fear. You know, the big brother, they are always watching you. They have cameras. They control everything you do. They even control the mail. So I see fear, but in the same time, I see that a lot of people are rethinking their own beliefs. Most people are open to new kind of thinkings, and I think that's the opportunity, because usually when everything is cool, when everything is good, nobody changes their mind, nobody changes opinion, because you know we are like that. We don't change. Even when you have the facts, nobody changes. But when you are facing literally through hell, you can open your mind, and I think that's what most people are doing. Like, oh, look, there is Colombia, there is Chile right here, there is Mexico. There are other countries, and they are not doing bread lines. What are we doing wrong, right? So I think that most people, thanks to the internet, of course, even though the government is trying to control the internet, but you know that's kind of is possible. You have hackers and all those things, and when the government put a prohibition, usually people use it more. So people are looking in the internet, and thanks to that, we are open. I think that most people are open to new ideas, but to take action, I believe that is fear. There is fear, and if we see history, not even one communism failed because you know the people were protesting or something. People used to protest where the communism failed. I mean, when you see the Soviet Union or the Berlin Walls or things like that in history, it was because the system was unsustainable, right? And they just failed. Was not because an opposition, was not because they lost an election, was not because an opposition leader. Usually it's because they run out of money, they run out of food, and they got sometimes an intervention from another country, or they just fail, or, you know, it usually is what happens because people are really afraid of the government, or what can they do, because in Venezuela, we are like 30 million of people, but like 15 million depends on the government. They depend because of a subsidy, because they work for the government, because they have, whatever, right? There's a lot of social programs, social welfare. They have something that they call the clap, where they got the food through your door. So you open your door and there's your food, things like that. So because they depend on the government, they are fear, and that's why I believe that socialism wants to keep the citizen in poverty and in ignorance, because they know that when you are poor and when you have no dreams and no hopes, it is better to manipulate you.
So we're talking a lot of trash about socialism in general. I want to give the audience actually specific examples of what is going on in Venezuela, so that it's not just, yeah, they're doing poorly. I want to give them an illustration, quality of life and economics and criminality. I want to talk a little bit about these specific things and talk about how these things have changed for the worse over the course of socialism. So let's first talk a little bit about the economics of Venezuela. You've mentioned already that the Venezuela is incredibly oil rich. I think it's, what is it, the second? No, I think it's the second most oil rich country. It's like eight times more oil than the U.S. And that's much more than Saudi Arabia. And everyone knows how oil rich Saudi Arabia is. Now, from what I've heard, some of your oil is actually starting to be imported from other places, because you can't actually access your own natural resources, of which you have more than almost every other nation in the world.
That is because the system is all collapsed. You know, who made the refineries, the oil refineries here in Venezuela, was the private sector. ExxonMobil, all those big oil companies, they were the guys who made all the infrastructure. They had all the knowledge. They had everything. So when the government expropriated everything, these guys just leave the country and they don't know how to maintain that. So we have here refineries exploding. You can read that on the internet, and people dying inside the factories because they don't have the proper maintaining. And it's not only that. We are importing everything that we used to produce. We used to produce, even the rice, even the black beans you eat. We are not producing nothing of that. We are importing everything. And the problem here is that the private sector depends on the government. The private sectors, the business guys, depends on the government, because we have the control of currency control. So if a business guy wants to repair his truck, he needs American dollars, right? Because the piece that he needs, he's in Germany or something like that. So he needs to go to the government and ask for the government to give him American dollars, and they pay to the rate the government says, and then is where they can buy the tool they need for the truck to keep producing. So that's another problem, that all the private sector depends on the government, the big guys, and they like that. They're getting really rich because the government gives them preferential currencies to them. So that's really the problem. We cannot have here a rebellion of Atlas, a jungle movement or something like that, because they usually like that.
I sorry to interrupt, Mike. I saw people.
No, go ahead.
I saw a guy getting arrested for smuggling in powdered milk in Venezuela. And I know there was like a toilet paper shortage a year ago. It's getting comical. It's like we can't even wipe our ass.
It's that's the good part. It's really funny. When you read the newspapers, it's man, I can't believe the president said that. Is this for real? But they put people into jail because of smuggling, and in smuggling there's a lot of big business involved. It's like the liquor in the 20s when the United States.
Right. Yeah, you have a very big black market because of all the shortage.
A very, very big black market. If it's for American stuff, like, I don't know, Ray-Ban glasses, Levi jeans, Converse shoes, things like that, you actually get rich doing that stuff, because everybody wants that. So everybody's craving for liberty, for capitalism. So the problem is that if the government knows that you're doing that and they are not getting nothing of it, they're not getting a profit, because all the generals and the military control the distribution, and that's why they have all the business. They put you in jail, like, to tell everyone don't do this because we're going to catch you. But yeah, smuggling is pretty common. It's the only way the middle class Venezuelan are eating, because
Even the middle class can't eat without a black market.
no, nobody can eat without black market, because what the government gives to you like monthly is just too little. It's like 2 bags of pasta, 2 bags of rice, and something like that. So, and you know what? When people gets their food from the government, like the 2 bags of pasta, they go instantly to the black market. Hey, I have this. So, yeah. And you know how the black market functions in Venezuela? This is the great thing about capitalism. It works thanks to WhatsApp, to Facebook, to Twitter. So, yes, capitalism is even, you cannot avoid capitalism in even socialism. Market always find a way.
Do you have a market for bitcoins? Has Venezuela dabbled in that at all? Alternative currency.
Yeah, it's very big. Many people, most of them the young guys, are doing stuff like that. All kind of internet business, like those things that you translate for other people, or that you pay to click and you view advertising. They pay you like 2 cents, something like, well, that's money here in Venezuela. And everybody has a PayPal account. We have a say. We say that PayPal is the most secure bank in Venezuela.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the crime. Now, with obviously food shortages comes a lot, and a black market is going to come a lot of crime. And we're not talking about the sort of crime of smuggling for people to stay alive, because obviously as anarcho-capitalists, we reject all sorts of government intervention, so we don't really consider the quote-unquote criminality that the government might say of people smuggling food so they can live a crime. Let's actually talk about real crime, homicides, rapes, theft. Let's talk about that. So Venezuela is one of the highest countries when it comes to highest countries in terms of the count for murder per capita. Yes. It's something like 50, 51, 52 per 100,000. That's pretty bad. So you're walking down Caracas. You as Leonardo, do you fear for your life? Do you fear that you're going to have somebody come up to you and try to take something, or even worse, try to kill you after they take something? Or do the statistics really hide the fact that this is going on only in certain areas, like, drug trafficking and certain poor areas? Is it happening everywhere, or just in, certain hidden places in the city?
No, it's happening everywhere, and you can feel it in the street. Everybody's like a paranoid. They don't talk to anybody, yes, they can rob you, they can kill you, whatever they want. And if you live in a high place zone, or if you are wearing nice clothes, if you have a good cell phone or something like that, it is worse. So what I try to do is to wear my normal clothing, not having a lot of, jewelry or things like that. I'm not showing, like peacocking. I'm not showing what I have, or some. Most people, don't use money in the streets. They try to not buy good clothes, to buy good shoes, because if you buy them, you're gonna be an easy target. And the problem with criminality is that first, we can't have guns. We are not allowed to have guns. Venezuelan people don't have guns, but as you know, most criminals don't care about laws, and they're gonna get guns anyway, right? So the problem is that first, we don't have guns to defend ourselves, to defend our families, to defend our houses. And second is that the government has something called the colectivos, which in English is the collective ones. Those are like gangs, subsidized by the government. The government gives them all they need, like the guns and food, whatever they want. You gotta
be kidding me.
Big mafias. No, it is true. You can Google this. Big mafias. They are the people, the power to the people. They are going to preserve these slum. We have a lot of slums, like in Brazil, slums like favelas, where we have a lot of theirs. And they take care of that because it's a power in the hands of the people. They need to have a people's police, right? So those guys are really making the big crimes, and they have motorcycles. They are better than the army. So they are making all the crimes. And you know what they usually look like? Have you ever played Grand Theft Auto? Well,
yeah.
It's the same stuff. They go over the street, kill somebody, kidnap somebody. And the government does nothing because they are the people, they are the poor people, the colectivos, and they are protecting their sons. So that's what you get when you let the absolute power wins. They are going to give the weapons to their people.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the colectivo, because about a year ago I read an article about Venezuela and how their own security forces have turned against their people. And I want to read a very small excerpt from this. I dug the article up because it paints an incredibly graphic picture of what is going on a regular basis. Quote, "The soldiers barged into Rafael Gonzalez's home as his mother and girlfriend looked on. It would be routine questioning, they assured him, and others arrested that night, before hauling them off to a dark military barracks. What happened next was anything but normal, Mr. Gonzalez recalled. He was stripped naked, kicked, and struck with the butt of a rifle. He said soldiers hung him by his arms from the ceiling with a cord, demanding to know whether he belonged to one of the gangs that terrorized his neighborhood in Venezuela's rural area of Barlovento with robberies and kidnappings. They told me they were going to play a game, little Rafael. It is called electrocution," said Mr. Gonzalez, who is 17. "They shocked me in the abdomen, the neck, the penis, the butt, the back, my hands, everywhere. I felt like my eardrums would explode." On October 21st, 5 days after his arrest, Mr. Gonzalez, bruised and terrified, was released, he said. And he soon realized that he was one of the lucky people. There were dozens of bodies that were found in massive graves that were outside industrial areas. And he was so fortunate that he wasn't the one that died. But I mean, have you heard of these stories?
All time. And the problem, Michael, is that it's getting normal. People are getting used to this. Oh, somebody got killed, somebody got kidnapped, the son of that guy was, it's pretty common right now, as it's pretty common people eating from the garbage, things like that. We are getting used to that. And, back on years ago, we were like, oh my God, no way, your son, things like that. But right now it's getting used. Is normal, and I think that the problem is that because of socialism is against human nature, you corrupt yourself. You destroy the civilization. You destroy all the I don't know. You corrupt the people, and they just are like animals. We're living in a tribal society, where tribes and everybody's trying to survive, and you are from my gang. And you are not allowed here, so I will kill you, things like that, because the government has so much power that in fact has no power at all. People are taking justice by their hands. What the government should do, that is apply justice, is what he does not care. He just take care of anything else but that, because it's their business in fact.
If it wasn't a podcast, I would be speechless. Unfortunately, I have to continue speaking, but my goodness, Leonardo, that it gives me a pit in my stomach just to think about what you guys are going through here, all for the name of a failed ideology. Now, the crime is clearly one of the most manifestly horrific things that are happening, but also there's quite a bit of civil rights violations that are occurring underneath Maduro, who is your current president, and what was going on when Chavez was president. Let's talk a little bit about that. Firstly, I understand that there's quite a bit of anti-Semitism. There was a lot of anti-Jewish sentiment in the Chavismo ideology, even in Maduro, yes?
Yeah, it is true. Chavez, some people who believe in those kind of stuff, like Kurds and things like that, say that Chavez was there because he was always cursing Israel, like I curse Israel, Israelis. So yes, they hate Israel, they hate and they support with money. They support with money the Palestinian government, the Palestinian people. So yes, in fact, we have a synagogue here in Caracas. Years ago, a group of colectivos, because when the government don't want to, when they don't want to show off, they send the colectivos to do the ugly job for them. Mm-hmm. So they send the colectivos to the synagogue, and they exploded. They shot shotguns inside the synagogue, writing the walls, Viva Chavez, long live to Chavez, things like that. And the government said, oh, this is horrible. Oh my God, we cannot stand for this. But we all know those were the colectivos sent by the government. And yes, they hate Israel. They hate even the Christian shores. They have expropriated 36 temples of the Christian shores, the Catholic and the Protestant. They are always fighting with the Christian shores. They tell to the pastors, oh, go to hell, pastors, go to hell, shores, because socialism is what Jesus Christ believes. So yes, I think that they want to impose religion, like in North Korea, where God is the leader and they have no other religion. That
state is God.
Yeah. I believe that if you have a strong religion, then you usually refuse to follow the man besides God or something like that. So yes, they are trying to say that the Catholic Church is capitalism because they came with the Spanish and many years ago, and it's a form of oppression, and the Jewish are the bad guys of the history and things like that. And it's not only Maduro. Every socialist guy in Latin America have the same feel and things like that. Yeah.
What about your free press? Is there any outlets for individuals to speak out on a national or on a private national platform outside of the internet? Obviously, has the government co-opted all of the free press that is currently existent? I read recently that there was a documentary about Hugo Chavez called El Comandante that was fought against quite heavily by the government. It was some type of anti-Chavismo documentary that the government wanted to quelch, and they're not letting it play in your country.
Yeah, well, I am one of the few lucky guys that have cable television, DirecTV, so I can know what is happening in Venezuela thanks to international media, because I cannot, and the El Comandante, the TV show, was I think it was Sony Entertainment Television, Latin America, and yes, it was for cable people, and CNN on Spanish, CNN en español, was also for cable people. So the government is even messing with the private cable TV stations. Yes, we don't have freedom of speech. Of course, we have a few private newspapers, but they don't say the truth, because they know that if they say the truth, they know what's going to happen, right? So they control themselves, and if there's also a lot of persecution to many journalists. And all that we know is because of the internet, because anybody has their phone open in recording in the streets. Whatever that happens, a Venezuelan has their cell phone, they record that, they put it on Twitter, on Google, and YouTube to let the world know. So we are all like the journalists, because yes, that's the only way we could know what is really happening, because even the private media don't want to, be in that edge.
Leonardo, you're the managing director of the Bastiat Society. How is an organization like that able to function in a country that is so clearly anti-capitalist? Yeah,
well, it was a big challenge, because most people were like, I don't want to be part of that. I support you. I like what you're doing, but I don't want to be in a picture with you. I don't want to sign.
Because they're risking their life.
Yeah, of course. They don't even want to be in the database, things like that. So it was a whole challenge. But yes, we're doing, and in fact, that's the reason why we are doing this. I read from a book from Lawrence Reed. I recommend to you is Real Heroes. Was published by Foundation of Economic Education, FEE.
Yeah.
And they have a quote in that book that says that real heroes don't do things because they think they're gonna win. They do their thing because it's the right thing to do. So I believe that's the spirit we have in the Bastiat Society. We know that we have all the things against us, but it's the right thing, because if we are not in here, who else is going to make this fight? And what we're trying to do is to not be so academic. There's another think tank here in Venezuela. They are doing a great job, but the problem is they're so academic, and most people in Venezuela, they don't read, they are just surviving, making lines, trying to get a job because there's a lot of unemployment, which is related to the crime. We're trying to make it in a simple language, in a simple way, like Bastiat did in his time. So we don't call it capitalism. We call it freedom, free market, free commerce. We try to not use the same words that are already satanized, demonized here. There's a lot of words, and we're trying to make it simple, understandable, not attacking the government, not attacking the institutions, but we all know that the government knows us and they know what we're doing, and they're trying to, but they have bigger stuff to take care of, like their big business, their big corruption, their big drug dealing. So I think that's why, but the day we become famous or something like that, of course they will go against us.
So I have one last question before we have to begin to wrap things up, and it's a little personal, so of course if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to, but I have to ask nonetheless, why, Leonardo, have you not left Venezuela yourself? All of these bad things are happening, and all of these horrific things that I could imagine so many other people would want to leave immediately, or even before, when they see the sign of things to come. How come you haven't left?
Everybody's asked me that question. Well, few couple of things. I had a business in here. I lost my business. I had a close friend that got shot, got killed basically in my arms. And I have friends in jail. So it's kind of the moral thing to do, right? If I go away, my conscience won't leave me alone. So I prefer to, wake up every morning with my conscience clean. I am doing the right stuff. That going away and, not having this conscience speaking to me like, man, what are you doing? So it's a moral thing. It's more like, I have to make this fight. And yes, of course, a lot of people have leave Venezuela. 3 million people are outside Venezuela. That's like the 10% of the population. A lot of people. And those are the people who where, they had the money, the American dollars, the money to flee out, because most people cannot. They have not the money. The black market, the minimum wage is $10. They cannot live even to Colombia. They cannot pass the frontier because they don't have the money to eat, to survive. So, yes, I am here, and the people who are fighting in the freedom movement are here because of conviction, because some people had a mother, a father, or a brother, or a sister killed, or has somebody in prison, in jail, or lost their business, or lost their father's or grandfather's business. So they are fighting because they don't have anything else to lose.
Incredible.
Leonardo, I give you a lot. I can't even express how much credit and respect I give you. You are an inspiration to everybody, and we think it's difficult up here, and we all have our work cut out for us, but you are down there literally risking your life for the message of freedom. And just you recognize the power of ideas, and you will be successful. I'm confident in that, but thank you for what you're doing for humanity. You are really making a difference, and I believe doing literally one of the most important things in the world.
Thanks to you, and thank you for letting the world know what is really happening here.
It's our pleasure, Leonardo. So I want to make sure that everybody knows where to learn a little bit more about the Bastiat Society of Venezuela, as well as the Bastiat Society of the rest of the world, because it is just one of many chapters. We will certainly put a link to your Facebook website so that people can support you and your work. And we will also put a link to the actual page itself, which the chapter, the headquarters is located in Charleston here in the United States. Is there any other place that you would like us to guide our listeners towards to follow your work?
Yes, we have a Twitter account too, and we recently have a YouTube channel. But if you can support us with what we most need here are books, but of course in Spanish books. And there's a support page. I will send you the link so you can support us via American dollars, Bitcoins, whatever. Even $5 here is a lot of money. We can do a lot of stuff. We can make a lot of panel discussions, readings with that. So yes, I will send you the support page.
I can tell you for one that I will be assisting you as soon as I get that link financially, as well as I hope our listeners are able to do that if they are financially able to as well. So I'd like to thank you once again. You are the kinds of heroes that we like to have on this program. Superman has nothing on you.
Nothing that. All the glory to God.
I want to thank you once again and to tell our listeners that they are listening to Flagship Freedom, the podcast that places you on the front line in the war of ideas. Until that next battle, so long, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Leonardo.
Thanks to you guys, and keep the fighting.
Way down inside of me, darling, I have only one desire. And that one desire is you. And I know nobody else ain't gonna do.